Please remain calm. Second episode of the HBO miniseries Chernobyl. We're back at it again. And here we are. It's I'm ready. I'm ready to dive in. I want to know some of your high-level thoughts on this bad boy. And we'll kind of go from there. But there is a lot of good information in this episode, which I like.
Yeah, man.
A lot of in spoken, as you would imagine, it would be spoken to someone who is dumb, right? Like Sherbina says, pretend I am a dum-dum. And I appreciate that because I think this part, as we have done the setup, as we have done the let's get everybody interested and excited about this craziness, now it's time to see exactly how people are going to respond. Now it's time to wrap our head around what the danger is, how we can make that danger something that we can sort of wrap our heads around by way of giving us, it is like, imagine it like this. We'll break it down into layman's terms for you, which I really appreciate. And tight. It's a tight, well-crafted story so far, obviously, as it's dealing with a lot of reality here and some fiction. But as it's dealing with a lot of reality here, it's nice that we don't have to meander too much on that stuff. But what were your overall thoughts on Please Remain Calm?
Honestly, man, I feel like this episode, this is the one that it is reality hitting the rest of the world, like everybody outside of the actual power plant of Chernobyl, and even some of the people who were inside. Reality comes crashing down about like how serious this actually is, because it got me thinking about the end of last episode where we're actually introduced to Legasov, and he's just getting the call like, hey, there's been a slight accident, you need to come be on this commission. And he's just like, okay, like he still has no idea of what it really is, and getting to watch his face as he reads that report before stepping into the commission, and him very much so being the only person in the room who truly understands what this means, and having the whole burden of the world of like, I need to be an alarmist right now. Like, I love how much that word gets tossed around here. Like, don't be an alarmist, don't be a reaction. It's like sometimes you have to be. Sometimes somebody's got to ring the bell, and that's what we really see here with Emily Watson's character and Legasov starting to come together. They're the ones who are going to have to ring the alarm bells for the whole world. Nobody else gets the full picture, and I love how this episode, kind of like you already said, it finds a way to very engagingly explain at least the overall bird's eye view basics of a nuclear reactor and like how this radiation is going to get out. And I think what's so cool about that too is kind of getting across the real danger of it and dispelling the fantasy of it. Because I think a lot of times when people hear the word just nuclear, they're like mushroom cloud, like nuclear explosion. That's what that means. And if you don't see that, you're like, oh, then I guess it must be fine. It wasn't a fucking nuclear explosion that took out 3 cities, so I guess it's okay. And I love the actual experts having to step up and be like, it is absolutely not okay, and this is why. And we're going to explain it to you in a way that's actually interesting and comprehensible, even though it's the basics. It's fucking cool, man. They found a way to make explaining a nuclear reactor, I don't know, the most popular show on television right now.
Got it.
Yeah, I'm fucking impressed.
Yeah, they use, pardon me, and I struggle with this. I do not have an English degree, but I struggle with metaphor and analogy. I think analogy is a very much more explicit comparison, whereas they use metaphor in this, right? To sort of like, it's like bullets. That's metaphorical talk, right? Not analogy talk. If I'm not mistaken.
Well, in a way, it's actually not even metaphorical, because when they're talking about the actual, I mean, it's hard. It still feels abstract because it's just so small, but it is the literal, the particle, the atoms of the nuclear material itself are doing physical damage to you and boring.
So it is more. It is more. So you'd say it's analogous, whereas metaphorical examples require a little bit more like creative liberty, I guess you'd say.
Right.
Okay.
And that's honestly what's so fascinating about that is how it's like, it's so small. I mean, we don't think about subatomic size very much in our daily lives, I would say. And that's so small that it's hard to even imagine, which makes it feel abstract, but it isn't. Like, it is actually what these are.
Very cool. So to finalize my point on this is that the metaphor, the analogous comparison to bullets is really cool. I think it helps people understand exactly what's going on here. So much of this is challenging because it's invisible. We don't see it. So we're trying to wrap our heads around the concept of it. And since we don't have a background in nuclear physics enough to understand it.
Sure don't.
It's good. It's good to have the episode do this for us, which I appreciate, which is really cool. And there's a lot of that stuff I'm looking forward to talking about and focusing some of our attention on. But what do you think of the beginning of this? This is a poem by Konstantin Simonov. It's interesting that they decided not to hit you with any subtitles. They did not translate it. They just let it play.
Right. And I'll admit, even though I ended up kind of liking that they chose that, on first viewing, I really was just kind of waiting for at least the final line to come out in English or something.
Yep.
And at the end of it, I mean, especially on a second viewing, I was like, since they committed to it being spoken in English and people not trying to do Russian accents and everything, I think adding these moments of just the reality of a Russian person speaking in their native tongue and in their voice, it's good to find opportunities to kind of use that and spritz that honest to God reality in here. And also, I mean, just that it makes you realize how much you glean from hearing something just from somebody's intonation, just their tone of voice. Like, you understand kind of the tone of this poem just from how he's saying it. It sounds mournful.
Yeah, it's, I guess, I found it here. I didn't write the whole thing. Did I copy and paste it? I did not. It's called To Alexei Surkov, who I guess must be another poet, but it's post-July 1941 invasion of Russia by Germany. And it's just sort of like an homage to the makeup of the Russian people and the land that you care about, despite it maybe being plain and things of this nature. And it's one of those types of poems, basically. You can read it. If you just look up Konstantin Simonov, Konstantin with a K, and you look up the poem called To Alexei Surkov, you can read it if you're interested in that.
Nice.
Yeah. I guess you'd say it's a testament to a poem, of course. So, of course, there's going to be a bit of a romanticizing. We always seem to romanticize things in our prose. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's essentially a testament to the will and the strength, the desire to sort of overcome, I guess you could say. That's the gist I got from reading it.
Cool. I didn't want to read that now.
Not much of a poet myself, so maybe I'm not interpreting it correctly. So
I enjoy reading it.
But we jump right back into the story, Matthew, and we jump right back in 7 hours later. So it's 8:30 a.m., April 26th. And we get this moment of a dosimeter alarm going off, which I love. I love this.
Oh, yeah.
I love the introduction of, I believe her name is Ulana.
Yes, Ulana Komyuk.
Yeah, I think they pronounce that with a U sound.
Ulana. And she's one of the only characters that is not technically a real person. They base her very much, the things she says.
She's a conglomeration of people.
Exactly. Like they basically tried to find a way to tell the actual dialogue and the actual contributions of just tons and tons of different scientists who are working on this in a more concise way. And they just, so a lot of the things she says and does, real people definitely did.
Right.
But they just framed it all in this one kind of composite character.
That makes sense when you're trying to maintain a narrative that you don't want to get overly confusing.
Right. Which you're already dealing with a complicated, still to this day, mysterious nuclear disaster that's hard to even explain. I'm like, I definitely understand wanting to keep your narrative just a little more focused.
Right,
and a couple of people.
Yeah, and you get an actor, actress, whatever, and we can start to follow this very intimate discovery that she embarks upon, and it keeps us engaged versus bouncing around to multiple scientists, making phone calls, figuring it all out. I mean, we're trying to keep the story tight, and I think it was a good choice just from a show running perspective.
Right.
If that makes sense.
No, what I love about her introduction here too. Even her lab partner comes in. And he's like, "Oh, you're working too hard. You're sleeping at your desk." And
Sure.
she's like, "Why are you here?" He's like, "I work too hard." And it seems light for a second, but the moment that dosimeter starts ringing off, they each kind of jump to attention. They start speculating about what could that be, and I like how very quickly she takes action. Like it's not a all right, well, maybe we should call somebody. Like, nope, all right, I'm going to go ahead and take a sample from the window, take it downstairs, put it under a microscope, and figure out what this is. Like, what is setting off our alarm? And like, within 2 minutes, they know what this is from.
Right. Yeah, it's some kind of spectrometer or something of the sort. And it's telling her what she needs to know. And when she realizes, I believe, the element involved, she goes, "Oh boy, this can't be good."
Oh yeah,
iodine 131, I believe, is the exact item, which means it's decay from U-235, which is a type of uranium. Of course, something that we know, as we're going to learn, is unstable because of the amount of neutrons in the atoms, I guess you could say. And that's something I was kind of learning about, just that part of it, which we'll get to when Legasov is breaking it down, which I thought was really fascinating. The idea of an element being unstable as a result of a bad composition between, what is it, electrons, neutrons, and what's the last one? Jesus Christ.
Oh, here we are. Ooh,
protons.
So hot.
It's proton, neutron, electron.
Thank you.
Proton,
I'm sweating.
Proton, neutron, electron. I remember that shit at least. That's about all I know, though. Other than they fly around and stuff. They orbit. That's what I know. That's my extent. But
they smash into each other.
My point is that I guess when there's too many neutrons, it causes this instability, which is why you don't just walk up and fuck with uranium.
Mm-hmm. And that's why your Diet Coke always flies out when you shake it, I think.
Yeah, pretty much the same thing. Is this it when you do, principle. Isn't this like baking soda and like Coke and you do the lava, right?
Sure, Bina's just like, it's like the volcano I made in 3rd grade, huh?
They're like, to get up against the wall, comrade. Because you are too stupid to continue.
You're just too dumb.
Yeah, in this the drama here, this is good storytelling. The making the phone call to Chernobyl and the phone just being left on the desk, no answer.
No one's picking up. Like, it'd be one thing. Like, I'm sure if there was like a full blown conspiracy at this point, they were trying super hard to cover it up, which obviously they were in a lot of ways. But if they had, routed all of Chernobyl's calls to, some government office, and a guy picks up and says, nope, everything's fine, and just hangs up, I think even then they'd be like, every power station's okay, but we have this much in the air, something's wrong. Like, they are too intelligent to be tricked at this point. But I just love the fact, and this was true, evidently this did actually happen, that they had tried to call the Chernobyl, the actual phones, and it just, no one picked up. It just was never answered. Yeah. And that's,
did you listen to the podcast?
Fucking unusual. I did. I actually listened to this episode. Picking up on them Craig Mazin facts.
Yeah. So nobody answers at Chernobyl, which is really creepy. And we have this hard cut to the hospital, I believe, in Pripyat. I like to say that quickly and loudly. Pripyat! It's fun. It's fun to me. It's kind of like a Klingon. It seems like a Klingon word for some reason.
Pripyat.
So the hospital is overwhelmed. There's an IV shortage. There's just, generally speaking, problems.
It's bad. It is fucking bad.
Yeah.
They don't have enough iodine, which is, again, learning from Craig's podcast, that's basically one of the only things you can take to at least keep your thyroid gland from just sponging up a ton of radiation.
Right.
So I guess, helps you internally a little bit, but, we're talking a level of radiation. It's like, even that's like it's putting a Band-Aid on a pretty open wound.
Yeah. They talk a little bit about that as it goes on, but I love the idea, like, the contaminated clothes, guy using milk. Like, what are you doing? You don't even use milk on regular burns, dude.
No. But I loved, God, what a shocking moment when, the one doctor realized, like, wait a minute, they're still just sitting here in their uniform, sitting here in their clothes. Like, these clothes are irradiated. We shouldn't even have them in here. And, like, what a shocking, just powerful image of them all marching downstairs, dumping these irradiated clothes with their bare hands into some, storage room. And there they sit. That's it. But they're so fucking irradiated that even their hands are burning from it.
That is bananas.
It's so terrifying, man.
Yeah. It's like an invisible poison just all over everything.
Everything. Can't ever get rid of it.
But that's something that's always like what's so hard to appreciate about just the chaos involved of these types of devastating situations. Imagine the hospitals surrounding the towers, right? Just the chaos and the triage you'd have to set up, or when Pearl Harbor was bombed, same thing. It was like, okay, what are we going to do now? So you have all of this madness, all of this chaos, and people going where they want to get help, and as you would imagine they would, and the staff doing everything they can to assist these people coming in with tissue damage, cellular damage beyond the average person's expertise at the hospital. In fact, probably most of them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, that's like incredibly specialized. I could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure chelation therapy is something that you could maybe do for radiation. Like that, I know for a lot of like heavy metals and like mercury exposure, like that kind of therapy has to be done. And that's like an extremely specific, intense chemical therapy to get that out of you. And I'm like, I'm sure most just regular old fucking hospitals who deal with stitches and broken bones and surgeries don't have shit like that just ready to go en masse.
I've never heard of chelation, did you say?
Chelation therapy, yeah. And I don't even know exactly like the mechanics of it, but that is like the only way to remove like seriously heavy metals from your system, and like mercury and like heavy duty mercury exposure. I know is one of the main things it's used for, and I think it can also be used for radiation exposure to a certain degree. I would think with these guys, I'm like, I don't know if there's anything you can do for somebody who was like, I just put the piece of graphite in my mouth.
Interesting.
Like, fuck.
Got it. Yeah, you know how to spell that?
CHELL.
Oh, I'm way off.
CHELLATION.
Okay, got it. Cool.
Chelation.
Shillelagh. Just knock the piss out of it with
Get
your
an old Irish
shillelagh.
club to whack it out of you.
We give it a shillelagh shampoo, as they say. So let's get to the Legazov meeting with the committee, and of course, our man, old Gorby. And, of course, the introduction of Skarsgård as Sherbina.
He's so great, man.
But, I mean, obviously, we're not really breaking ground by suggesting that the likes of Jared Harris, Stellan Skarsgård, Emily Watson are great actors. It's pretty...
Yeah, shocker. They're very
crazy.
competent.
Wow. Regale us with your insight, Dean. But it's just... This kind of stuff is impressive to me. This type of reading a paper and reacting away and realizing that these people, that there's so much going on, I think, in this moment with Legasov on the couch, which is, put yourself in his position if you can, just for a minute, which is, you know who you are, you know what your expertise is, you know that this person, Sherbina, who is a powerful man, we get the impression, is dead wrong, and it's not because he doesn't know any better. Well, it is. It's not because Sherbina is attempting to be deceptive, right? Like, and he's not in denial. He's just getting these reports from these guys, and he's going, "Oh, they must be telling the truth."
Right.
And now he's going to present it to Gorbachev. Like, we're going to tell the fucking main guy, right? Old Stainhead himself.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to tell him what's going on. And now you are suddenly in the position where you have to tell him how wrong he is and how everyone in this room is going to push back on you on this. And now this is your life. I mean, and just you're about to enter the room. First of all, you're already involved in a life-changing, continent-changing event. Now you have to put yourself out there by sitting in front of these men who we've sort of established the way this is probably going to go in episode 1. And now you're dealing with repercussions for the rest of your life.
Oh, yeah.
In the way you're going to challenge these guys.
And just the fact that like the atmosphere of the room right now is obviously still nervous. Everybody is aware that an accident has happened, but Sherbina is even, you can tell he's got that fucking politician charm about him where he's like, it's like, I've been told it's like an exposure to a chest x-ray. And he's basically rounding out his talk of things are under control. Everything's fine. Like everybody's finally gotten a nice little pep talk here, and even Gorbachev is like, all right, well, it seems like it's in good hands. If there's nothing else, we're adjourned. That's it. And you have to be the guy who's like, actually, it's nothing but bad news, guys. It's really not. Everybody sit back down, eat your fucking vegetables. It's nothing but shit. Like, it's really bad.
And Skarsgård is great here because does he not... Skarsgård's portrayal of this Boris Sherbina character is really compelling. I don't know much about the Sherbina person in real life because I'm not reading like that because I don't want to know like what happens. So, but
I kind of spoiled some stuff like that for myself. Whoops.
So
I'll hold.
Yeah. So with Skarsgård's portrayal here, what I like about this is, as you said, there is a politician's charm to him, but there's also this sort of militaristic menace in him too.
Absolutely.
And boy, is that a nice, beautiful blend for a powerful Russian politician. Like, I get the impression that he's playing this guy in a way that it's just perfect for the way this character is written. Whether or not it's based on the real guy, I don't know. But I like this, man. I like this menace with a hint of charm.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He knows his audience. He's like, that's his specialty versus, Legasov's specialty. He's good with people and knowing his audience, knowing how he can intimidate, knowing when he can lighten the air. Like he's good, man.
Right. All right. Let's see. We have basically some of the facts here is, like you said, the way the briefing goes down is right. It's sort of like business as usual, just another day in the office. Chernobyl stable, the region secure. General Pikolov is on scene. No more than 3.6 Röntgen, equivalent to a chest x-ray, as you already said. And Legasov has to be the guy, man, right?
Absolutely. And I love how he contradicts that whole using the 3.6 Röntgen. He's like, that number's been bothering me. That is not the equivalent of a chest x-ray. It's about the equivalent to 400 of them. But that's not even the main reason it's bothering me. He's like, that's just the number they gave us because that's the maximum their dosimeter could read. He's like, we have no idea how much it actually is.
Right. And that's when he points out it could be about 4 million chest x-rays. I mean, to go from a chest x-ray to 400 to 4 million in a conversation where Gorbachev is like, I'm about to get out of here, bang a couple of Chechnyan prostitutes, and call it a fucking day. But now I got to do this, so this is crazy, right? But yeah, the graphite on the ground, there's only one place in the entire facility you'll find it, the reactor core, and this means it's open. Ugh. And that's when Sherbina says, well, that's not what Brukhanov said. Oh, Brukhanov, you fucked up, dude.
You fucked up. Labor camp time, Brukhanov.
But Gorbachev wonders why he's contradicting party officials. I love that question. That's just indicative of this chain of command, which is, why are you contradicting party officials? Legasov is clearly not a party official. Therefore, his opinion is a little less valid until he starts offering irrefutable evidence, or at least what he believes is irrefutable evidence, right? He talks about the RBMK, uranium-235 is the fuel. And like we were alluding at earlier, every atom is like a bullet traveling at the speed of light, penetrating everything in its path, which he goes on to illustrate. Each gram of uranium holds 1 billion trillion of these bullets, and that's only in 1 gram. Chernobyl has 3 million grams on fire. Okay? Now,
so insane.
He then gets into math that I don't understand. We're talking to the power of bullshit. 3 million billion trillion bullets.
I think I read that's octillion at that point. 3 octillion is what that actually is.
That sounds like a race that's dangerous in Star Trek, so it works for me.
Right.
The Octillians are here and they want our women. in our thyroids.
To completely soak our thyroids in poison.
Bullets in the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat. Most of these bullets will not stop firing for 100 years. Some of these bullets, but most will be 50,000 years. I mean, those numbers are insane. Uranium-235 is the fuel. An atom is a bullet. There are a billion trillion in a gram. There's 3 million grams. Start to do the math, and it becomes a dire. What am I trying to say? What's the word? Precognosis, I guess you could say.
Precognosis.
Oh, fuck. Prognosis. So anyway, he goes,
Precogs.
50, yeah, precom. Department of?
Dog water.
Murder. So Gorby's like, all right, so go to the reactor.
Oh no, dude, the line
take
right
the
here,
guy.
I love this so much where Gorbachev actually kind of tries to pin him on this for a second to see how he reacts. And this is the moment where Legasov kind of like stands his ground in a way that I think works really well. Because he's like, so you're saying you've deduced all of this from the description of a rock in here? Because that was the detail that stood out to him when, the firefighter picking up a piece of smooth black mineral. And he's like, that's graphite. And that means the core's open. And that means all of this. So he's saying, just because of the description of this rock, you've come to all these conclusions. And he's just like, yes.
Right.
Like, yeah, that's how fucking confident I am in that. And that's when Gorbachev actually pauses and is like, well, all right, Sherbina, you're going to go there and you're going to take Legasov. You're going to look at it yourself.
Yep. And directly report back to me, to which, of course, Sherbina says, a wise decision.
But of course.
Man, he's so grizzled. I love him in this.
Stellan Skarsgård, man. That big fucking scary Swede.
Yep.
So good.
But this continues. I like that the episode's like, we're going to give you a lot of this sort of in back-to-back scenes. I think that was a good choice for us to sort of wrap our heads around a little easier.
Right. And just in kind of a meta sense, there is... I like that the show kind of risked getting into some of the actual details and the description of the workings,
right?
At least like the foundational principles of how a nuclear reactor works. Because in truth, like I think a lot of like writers or producers in Hollywood would hear in a pitch that, all right, in this scene they're going to actually talk about how a nuclear reactor works and be like, oh, that's boring science shit. That's going to turn people off. But I think it's actually so mysterious, and all of us as regular people mostly know very little about that hearing somebody put it into a way you can understand is actually fucking interesting.
It is very interesting. Yep.
You're like, oh, I've never really heard. Because I mean, honestly, and being 100% honest, maybe I'm a dumb, but maybe I'm just like everybody else. I wasn't sure. I was like, oh, so a nuclear power plant produces electricity still through steam. It's just the fuel instead of like a coal fire to heat up that water is a nuclear fuel. I was like, oh, that's right. What that I never really understood that.
Yeah, the difference is one's coal and one isn't.
Exactly.
One's nuclear.
It's just the fuel.
And he kind of breaks it down, right? He says the electricity, the reactor makes electricity with steam. The steam in turn turns the turbine, which generates the electricity. Great. We know this. Now, your regular power plant does this with coal. A nuclear plant uses fission.
Oh, yeah.
So we go back to our uranium-235. It has too many neutrons, he explains, which makes it unstable. Bullets are flying off of the uranium, right? If we put enough of those uranium atoms close together, the bullets from one atom will eventually strike another. The force of this impact splits that atom apart, releasing a tremendous amount of energy or fission. The neutrons travel so fast that they are in something called flux, which means it's relatively unlikely that the uranium atoms will hit one another. In RBMK reactors, we surround the fuel rods with graphite to moderate this flux. Great. Ooh. So that all makes sense, which makes us go, well, then how does it happen? Right? Which I'm assuming we're going to get to by the end of the series. But that's a cool way to think about it. We don't, when we think of all these things, we forget that, we have these atoms with subatomic particles rotating around them, and it's crazy. Like, it's utter bananas to think about the way some of this stuff is, right? Some of the perfection of some of these things makes you go, we're in a fucking simulation.
Right. And it's crazy to think too that like the mechanics of how radiation even, hurts you, kills you, is that those neutrons are, the uranium is such an unstable element that even down to its atoms and the neutrons are flying around, and it's just like carving through you. Like it's carving through your flesh at a fucking atomic and subatomic level.
Right.
Because it's just the most unstable thing.
And now in terms of, so that's sort of like the math part of this, right? The science and the math part. But what I really like about this moment, and somebody said it in the chat here. Who said it? The entire helicopter ride is amazing in establishing the characters. That's from Matthew Lewis. Yes, I agree 100% with that. What I like about this is I like that we see that Sherbina is the first guy that we've been introduced to outside of Legasov that is willing to listen, and he shows competence and understanding.
Right. And I love how at first, I honestly, he changes more than any other character in this episode. Like,
sure.
He starts out still pretty reluctant. Like he's open to it too. I think he's open to it in the very pragmatic sense of, I will listen to you to get enough information to fucking do the job. Like let's figure out what we need to do and do it. Like that's kind of his only beginning. But as time goes on, I think him as a character is so interesting because he starts to really see the truth of it and understand the truth of it and start to open up more to like, all right, well, we're going to have to look at this deeper.
Yep. Good stuff. So I like the little, I like the reminder, which is good. Now I know how nuclear reactor works. I don't need you.
That's where he's still at right now. He's like, I just want to shake you off, nerd.
We get a quick look in on the hospital. We go back to our friend Ludmila looking for her husband. And she ends up getting, I guess you'd almost say, a hall pass from Major Burov to go to Moscow, which apparently is where he was transported.
That's so crazy. And the way this guy seems at first, you're thinking like he's not. He's just like, my head is fucking deep in paperwork right now. I have 1 million people just like you. I don't care. But he gives her that pass. Like, yep, he's being transported. Go on ahead. Tell him I sent you.
Yep. I'm curious to see how that goes.
I know. Evidently, and the one thing I heard, partly from the podcast and from stuff I've been reading, that this story of these two individual people is extremely accurate. Like that the events, how they play out, are pretty much how it happened in real life.
Cool.
So that makes me both excited and nervous. Like, oh God, I hope it works out okay. Because this definitely happened to actual people.
Right. This is we flash back to the helicopter ride, and I just love this stuff. I love this, man.
Fantastic. Again, a time where Legasov, a man who probably doesn't have to fucking lay down the law like this, knows that he's the only person who understands what's happening well enough to be like, you cannot do this. I'm basically forbidding it.
Sure.
Like, I'm going to have to get across to you how dire this situation is, because the helicopter pilot is initially ordered by Sherbina to go right over the plume. Like, we're going to look down into the reactor. That's what Sherbina says. I was told here to come look. I'm going to go look. I'm going to look straight down in it.
Right. I love that we have a moment with the Legasov character where he is seeing something he's never seen before that he knows a lot about. Like, this is pretty fascinating. Yeah. This is like discovering dinosaur bones or something, right? Right. The first time you unearth something that you've studied and thought about your whole life, and then you actually see we're witnessing this very thing, and then it's cool to watch the expertise, the knowledge, the education sort of all play out as he just says, "I've seen enough." He knows immediately. That, and remember, he doesn't have YouTube. He doesn't have Google. He doesn't have Wikipedia, right? To have seen these secondhand, this is something he's going, whoa, man! I have seen enough. I know the color. I know what's going on here. I see the radiation is ionizing the air. You're gonna beg for the bullet if you fly over that opening.
Oh, man, so good. And that's even after he had told Sherbina, he's like, we'll be dead within a week if we fly directly over that. Right. And Sherbina's like, fly over it or I'll have you fucking shot. And that's like what you said, where he's like, you'll be begging for that bullet, man. It's going to be worse.
Yes. Excellent. But then Sherbina relents. And again, he's outside of Legasov. He's one of the most compelling characters so far.
Oh, he's great.
there's just something about him. There's something about watching. He's not an enemy. He's not a roadblock. He's not a denier. He's not an officious sort of jagoff.
Right. And I think right here, in his mind, in this moment, he's genuinely thinking, you're just scared, and I want to get the best look that we can get. I want to understand what's going on. And I think in his mind, I think he comes from, it's mentioned later on that he kind of had worked in like mechanical engineering or factories. And so I could totally understand from his like point of view, from just his life experience, that we have to get a good look at this thing. Like, you literally, to look at it, we need to understand it. And it's like an unfathomable possibility for him of, we can't even go look at it. That's too dangerous. And I like I said, I think he thinks that Legasov's scared, and he's like, no, fuck you. We're just going to go look.
Right up until the end.
Right up until that moment.
Yeah.
When he sees how truly, Legasov means it.
Especially when he tells him they'll be dead in a week. I mean, that's, and there, remember, Sharina's working off of the information that we have, which is one of the things I like about his character, is that he's getting the information as we're getting the information as given to us by Legasov. That's why the Legasov POV is interesting, but we can't relate to it as much as we can, say, Sharina, because we don't know. We're learning as he is learning. And the things, point. Right, and the things he just learned are now bouncing around in his head like unstable neutrons, right? They're starting to bounce around in his head, and he's thinking to himself, holy shit, 44 million chest x-rays. Like, I can only imagine the things he's thinking about, having just gone to this meeting with this guy where he's learning this information, and what he's truly thinking. And that's, it's fun to entertain those thoughts.
Right. Where his thought process is taking him.
So we go to Minsk.
To the party headquarters of Minsk.
Yes, everything's a party headquarters.
It's a party.
And we see government in action. This
fucking guy.
Oh, this is why no one likes scientists.
That's why everybody I hear talking about how they want to be socialists and commies are all people who don't do anything. They have no jobs. They just want to be given the office. This guy, at least this guy fucking sold shoes.
Sold shoes, probably clubbed a couple people.
Why did the Soviet Union not work? I don't think I'm not seeing any connecting dots here. But I like how he says scientists, no one likes them, they spread fear.
Right.
What a crazy thing to say to her, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that's too fucking real, as far as like, some shit just doesn't change, huh? That like nobody wants to be told bad news, even if it's utterly urgent, actual, real, factual bad news that we need to address. And they're like, well, you're just scaring everybody, you're rounding everybody up. Come on, I don't want to hear about this. Gross.
I like my opinion better than yours because it's more comfortable for me, is essentially what he's saying.
Right. He's like, I've been assured there's no problem. And she's saying, well, there is. There definitely is. Well, I like my opinion better. That's where she's like, I'm a nuclear physicist. Before you got here, you were working in a shoe factory. And he's like, yeah, but now I'm in charge. As if that
to
means
the workers
anything.
Of the world. Oh man!
As if, I love that just empty, like, well, but I'm in charge. That's what the hierarchy says. I'm in here on the hierarchy, so my opinion matters more. Like, come on, obviously.
What's your logical fallacy?
Oh, that is a deference to authority.
Yes, baby. That's my guy right there. He's learning. Argument from authority, indeed. Well, she urges him to distribute iodine, and
he drops it off with his secretary.
I love that.
Hey, this fucker's gonna die, but you better go ahead and start taking iodine.
Yep.
So good.
Good stuff. So I like this. I like the structure of this episode as television goes, right? We've been talking a lot about this story and some of the ideas behind it, and because it is based on a true story, a true event, I guess you'd say, there's a lot of discussion around that. But also, it's important to remember that it's a television show as well, and we have to talk about that part of it too, which I think we're doing a pretty good job of, if I do say so myself. But I think that this is a well-structured episode, in that we're seeing the Legasov Sherbina almost on this inexorable collision course with what's, of course, going to be Yeluna. What is her name again? Yeluna. I don't need her last name. And that's what we're setting up, which is cool. I like that. I like that we're seeing her information that she's gathering, her expertise, and then theirs, and how they're going to start interacting. Whenever I saw, and we're going to that scene now, Brukhanov and Fomin waiting, and I knew my guy Skarsgård was coming, I couldn't fucking wait for this moment.
You guys are fucked. You don't even know it.
I could not wait to observe what was going to be happening here. And the arrogance, the scene is just so good. It's so good.
Oh yeah.
The arrogance, Brukhanov says, there's this moment where he says, Brukhanov is talking about, here's a list of the individuals responsible, right?
Here's the list of the dicks we gotta smash with a hammer. Definitely not mine, though.
And it's just so, it reminds me of, by the way, we said we were going to do, a side note, we said on the next bonus we were going to do Ice Pirates. Before that, we said we were going to do Rising Sun. We should do Rising Sun.
Oh, you think, huh?
Well, whatever. Well, we talked about it 5 times and we didn't do it.
It's true. It's true. We are fucking dangling that one.
Not as much as certain other ones that we mentioned once a long time ago that we never hear the end of.
What are you talking about, dude? Doesn't sound like anything to me.
Reset the clock. But it doesn't look like anything to me. Inside jokes you don't get if you're new here. But but no, it's there's a stupid line in that film Rising Sun with Wesley Snipes and Sean Connery, and he's like, Americans are always concerned with the blame. And it's funny, I thought about that here when they're talking about it. The Japanese are more interested in fixing the problem, not the blame. Fix the problem, not the blame, right? He said that's one of his mantras in that movie. And I thought about that here, like this guy's so concerned with, here's a list of individuals. That's one of the first things he says, which is not, here's what's happening. Here's how we're fixing
discovered.
It, right?
Right.
They're so concerned with staying out of the crosshairs.
Right. And even at this point, you got to imagine trying to figure out what caused, like the source of the events, the actual mechanical things that went wrong. That also doesn't matter as much. It's like you need to be looking for a solution to fucking contain it, man. Like that should be your only priority right now. Mm-hmm. It's so unfathomable. And like the irony of this whole scene too is once Sherbina calls over Legasov, and I think it's Brukhanov also is like, tell us how an RBMK reactor explodes. And he's like, I'm not prepared to say that at this time, or to explain that. I don't know. And he's like, wow, it's disgraceful, really, spreading disinformation. I'm like, you just handed him a list of guys you want punished. There's probably some guys on there who like took a bite out of your sandwich one day, and you're like, fuck him. Yeah,
absolutely.
Like personal bullshit. Like you're looking for a list of names to place blame on, and you're going to actually shit on the scientist who is here to figure out how to solve this horrible problem.
And the fact that he's saying things like, you're saying dangerous things. I mean, break that down for just a minute. He's not saying, even it's not dangerous outside of it's going against a narrative that you've woven here. That's the only danger. Everything else is suggesting we should be safe. There is no danger here, right?
Exactly.
And yes, I love, and this is where I love, Sherbina takes his newfound education and just blows these guys away, because now their fear is, holy shit, Comrade Sherbina, a powerful man, kind of knows what he's saying here. When he says, why did I see graphite on the roof? And that's when Brukhanov just turns to Fomin and says, why?
Dude,
the immediate passing of the buck.
He only knows how to shift blame. That's like the only fucking skill he has.
It's it, dude.
But what I love about Sherbina in this moment is that, obviously this is still new information to Sherbina. He doesn't fully know it, understand it, the ins and outs of it. But I think he also just puts it out there to see what their reaction to it would be. Like, I'm going to ask them, why did I see graphite, and see what their reaction is. And you can tell they're both one, shocked that he would bring it up at all, but scared in realizing he's not the dolt they expected him to be when it came to this.
Correct.
And like they were just resting on, he doesn't know, so he's not going to be able to question us.
What graphite on the roof? He's like, oh, maybe it's burnt concrete. And that's when he steps into Sherbina's world and he goes, now I know concrete.
Oh, no, I know.
I love how he just says, now there's your mistake.
You're a dead man.
I love when he just says, thank you for your service. Take them away.
Just lead them away by the fucking arm.
I normally this stuff would drive me bananas, but I don't care when they're rounding up their own fucking scumbag politicians. Shit. Fuck. That was beautiful. But
shit, we haven't even talked about this fucking stone cold badass general, colonel.
Yeah, he's now. We'll do him now. Pikolov.
So fucking good. Where he talks about we have a much larger dosimeter now that we could mount on a truck to get in there, but we don't have all the lead shielding necessarily to put it on. And he volunteers himself to go in with like less than appropriate for the situation.
You would not say optimum shielding.
not the best case, but he fucking like that is some badass
cool
shit.
Scene,
like I did not expect an officer of that rank to be like, I'll do it. And he's like, yeah, put me in the truck. I'll fucking drive it right up to the edge of the reactor area myself.
Yeah. And he does. And he reports 15,000 Röntgen. The core is open. Legasov breaks it down. The fire is twice the radiation of Hiroshima. That's every hour. Hour after hour. 20 hours, right? I think he starts breaking it down.
Oh, yeah. Hour after hour. 20 hours since the explosion, so 40 bombs worth by now.
Yippee.
Fun in the sun, kids.
And as they're escorted away, they are yelling, Dyatlov, it was him. Right?
He was the one.
No, get him.
Take them to the local party headquarters. Thank you for your service, your excuse.
That's a euphemism.
Woo, they got some fun euphemisms there.
As he's led away.
Your service is greatly appreciated. That means cut off your head.
Yeah, man. Well,
oh boy.
5,000 tons will be needed of this boron, I believe, and sand because this is Legasov's only answer for now. You can't fly directly over. And he urges Sherbina to evacuate Pripyat.
And Pripyat, 50,000 people. And I like the point, the obvious thing where Sherbina says at first, like, why not water? Like, we just dump water on it. And he's like, that will instantly evaporate. It's so hot the water will just never even touch it.
Yep. Cool little scene where he's throwing back some vodka, and he sort of has this moment where he makes this decision to not cause panic here. He doesn't say anything.
And this is, it's brutal that he has to take this on individually here, but also in a way, I think there's no real other choice to make here.
Yep.
In a sense. I mean, like, what? I mean, you could tell these two people and they'll get away, sooner. Maybe they might not even believe you. Maybe they start causing a ruckus saying that you're causing a disturbance and now you're having to fucking explain this situation. Like, it's one of those things where you're like, I'm going to have to lie and be a piece of shit. But all I can really do that makes a difference is push for them to evacuate sooner, push for the officials to evacuate sooner.
Right.
I don't know. It's a gross thing to have to do.
It's quite a moral conundrum, is it not?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a tough one.
And I love that small moment too when he comes in.
Had he known he was going to hang himself, he probably would have slipped him a napkin with a fucking head for the hills.
Fucking run for it.
Right.
But dude, I love when he comes in there. It's one of my favorite just like character moments in this episode where he asks for the shot and then she hands him one. He's like, actually, can I have it out of one of those? Like one of the glasses that was upside down. He's like, that wasn't exposed to the air as much. And it's like, even the nuclear physicist has that moment of like, I know it doesn't really make a difference, but it feels better.
Right.
I just want to do that. Yep. Like he knows, of all people, he knows that doesn't really fucking matter.
Yep.
But it's still just the smallest thing you can actually personally control.
Yeah. We get that quick shot of the dead it looks like some sort of buck on the ground, and then we go to the helicopter scene, which is just incredible.
Oh God, yeah. Oh, so fucking dark.
And these guys, I mean, how far away are they? How far could they possibly be away? A few thousand meters? I mean, how far could they actually be? They're just standing there with a binocular and watching this.
Oh, you mean Legasov and Shabina? Yeah,
just soaking it up.
They're a couple buildings over, like they're like across the way.
One of the things that was really incredible about and illuminating with the HBO podcast, the official Chernobyl podcast, is they were saying that the other reactors, people were still working.
That's insane.
Insane.
Yeah. Like literally just fully functioning. They couldn't turn them off. They were still providing power to thousands of people.
Yeah. Just go to work. Everything's fine. No, we're good.
Nah, go ahead.
Now, I don't know about the
you
trueness.
might want to put on a cloth mask, but head into work.
I don't know about the reality of the helicopter crash. This would be something that he would have had to have gained from speaking to witnesses.
True.
But it's really intense, a very visceral moment. It just comes, he sort of loses tracking on where he is, and then his rotary blades hit that crane cable, and he's done. And it just at first, I watched this episode twice, and on the first watch, I thought, holy shit, is it, I mean, could it possibly be that the radiation is so intense it's breaking down the metal and the helicopter just fell apart? I was like, that seems so unrealistic to me. So I watched it again.
I think it was just that the pilot became incapacitated by the amount of radiation and lost control of the helicopter. Yeah, like I'm sure it was still the radiation
and the visibility.
It might even just fucking burned his eyes. Like, I mean, you're right over the laser death beam of direct radiation.
And also them losing communication with him. That's when you go, okay, this isn't normal smoke.
No,
I mean, it's breaking up your radio waves are being ripped around. You can't even communicate with him as he flies over it.
His fucking radio is probably melting in there.
Yeah.
I mean, he just flew into the lightsaber of death, like just into it. And they had already been telling him, like, not too close, like around the edges of the thing at most. But he just right straight to the center of it, and down he goes.
Yeah.
Oh, what a disheartening moment, especially for the other helicopters within view. Like, okay, our turn, I guess.
Right.
Shit.
Yep.
Oh, it's so brutal, man. And this is, dude, editing wise, like straight up just filmmaking wise, maybe one of my favorite moments in this episode, just from where we cut to here, because he says, to Legasov, is there any other way? Like, is this the thing we have to do? And Legasov just looks at him and shakes his head, and Sherbina gives him a different order of like, all right, go ahead and approach from the west, and we cut from here over to Emily Watson's character.
Yeah.
The other way. The other way that we're going to have to approach this that Legasov and Sherbina both don't know yet. Yeah. That is how you
and not just approach it, but the way they're approaching it is
they don't even have all the variables.
It's 100% a catastrophe waiting to happen, way worse than already there is.
Which is one of the best reveals in this episode.
Yeah, it's great. But yeah, I like this approach from the west. My guess was to try to catch some of the wind carrying the sand and boron into the reactor.
Right.
Well, the talking in code stuff here is beautiful. This is Russian as shit.
So Russian. Simka, little Boris.
Yeah. So just naming sort of Boris is 5, Simka's 14, which is cool. So boron is number 5, and is it silicon maybe is number 14?
Right.
Which is awesome because then she's like, oh, okay. So she's getting information about what's actually happening there through this person that she's befriended.
Because that shit is, classified right now. They're not, putting that information out publicly.
100% no. 100% no.
But it's so good, and I love how she says it too. At first, she's like, they're putting boron and sand on the fire. And, the other scientist is like, that's what I would do. Mm-hmm. But what we see her do is she doesn't say anything. She just goes and pulls out blueprints and starts looking at the actual structure of the building. And then he's like, where are you going? Chernobyl. Boom. Off to the next scene, man. Fucking good filmmaking.
Yep. And we go right back to these two beasts sort of carrying the day in their scenes, right? Big time. They're talking about the realities here, right? Legasov and Sherbina, which is, we'll be dead in 5 years.
Oh, yeah,
and this is something that Legasov says that really hits home with Sherbina. I mean, to the point where he sits down because he's coming off a doctor saying there's no need to evacuate, which of course is just more bullshit.
Right. And, and of course, this, I think, is very much Sherbina's way of approaching and handling things. He walks in the room saying, it's looking great. 20 smooth runs of dumping the sand. It's, we're making some progress. And that's, Legasov's only replies is there's 50,000 people in this city. They got to be evacuated. Right. That needs to happen. And Sherbina's, in a funny way, trying to look on the bright side. But like we've been saying, he's falling into the fallacy of authority, deferring to authority, instead of looking at reality. What does he say? Not that, the doctors analyze the situation. No, the doctor says this is okay, so it's okay.
Right. And that's when the phone rings. He answers it, says thank you. He then tells Legasov that a nuclear power plant in Sweden has detected radiation and identified it as a byproduct of the fuel from Chernobyl. He then says, and America now has satellite imagery of us.
The whole world
and
knows.
By the way, Germany's not letting their kids play outside.
And yet our kids out right here, right now, are outside playing around.
And this is Legasov going, okay, I'm going to evacuate this shit.
Yeah. Like this needs to happen now. And I think, I cannot remember who it was off the top of my head. I have to dig back into our listener comments. I'll find it at the end. But somebody made a really good point as far as Sherbina's view of Legasov post this scene. Because you got to imagine, like, this is a heavy, brick of reality to hit you in the face when you're Sherbina, where you understand the situation's pretty bad now, and a dire priority one fucking thing you have to handle. But you're hit with the reality of, just because I'm here handling it now, my life has been drastically shortened. Not just that, but the way you must view Legasov from here on is he knew enough to understand that walking into this situation, his life is going to be shortened, and he has carried on. Like, you're waking up to this reality now, but he's known, and he's still doing his job.
Right.
Like, that has got to make you look at a person differently.
Yeah, that's intense, man. That's good stuff. So, moving on. Where to next, Mr. Anderson?
Oh, dude, that fantastic
we get to see Tom Brokaw, by the way. Is that what that was? I couldn't tell.
It did look
I think it is.
him.
I'm pretty sure it is.
I didn't look up whether or not it was him, but no, it's Peter Jennings.
Jennings. Fuck.
I was like, I'm not sure if Tom Brokaw's hair ever was that brown.
That's a good point.
But Jennings and a bunch of the Soviet officials, Gorbachev, I think, watching the TV. But 2 p.m., April 27th, 36 hours after the explosion, we have this fantastic view of a line, just an endless line of buses pouring into Pripyat as this, couple, I guess, has like a broken down motorbike and they're working on it. I love, again, this is such an excellent choice of focus because a bus is not scary or ominous. It's nothing. It's a fucking bus. Like, there's no way to make that strange or out of place. But to show the endlessness of this line, one after the other, literally as far as the eye can see, that carries a weight of it. Of what the fuck could this possibly be for?
Crazy.
Like, I love how this show is able to pull out chunks of unease and depict uneasiness and doom so well without it really being anything. Like we've talked about so many times every time we cover a horror movie. Like, the best kind of horror is that subtle. It isn't everyday. It isn't a real thing that's just turned slightly. It's just off kilter. And seeing this many buses endlessly pouring into one town is just off kilter enough to make you feel like there's something I don't understand happening, and that's what's confusing and terrifying.
Crazy, man. I just typed Peter Jennings into Google, and the first 2 things that come up, number 1, ABC World News Tonight with David Muir, Chernobyl nuclear disaster, and Peter Jennings over here, and then they followed the Berlin Wall. Crazy. All this shit covered. And then, lung cancer announcement video. That's lovely.
His final TV sign-off. Boy, oh boy.
Yay. Great. But, yeah, this sort of, we need to evacuate because of that giant, terrifying cloud in the sky.
Absolutely. Everybody head on out. And they told everyone in Pripyat evidently that this is a temporary, or for a couple days we need to evacuate you. And that's that. But nope, they never returned. Nobody has returned to that town since.
Right.
It is fucking sitting abandoned. And this whole sequence is fantastic, that we're not really hearing any dialogue. We're not seeing, people really have exchanges. We're just seeing them in mass, just very quietly, very relatively quickly and easily, honestly. It's orderly, moving out, everyone getting on the buses, the hospital moving out, and just hearing that announcement over and over. Again, a Russian, an actually in Russian language announcement, which I think was cool to hear. Yeah, this is what it would look like if you're standing on a roof in Pripyat watching the evacuation happen.
Pretty wild. We then have our meeting with we get our two groups together that we've been watching the whole time for this sort of final push towards the end of the episode here.
That is it.
She briefs Legasov and Sherbina, and they in turn are going to brief Gorbachev.
Time to.
Yep. This scene is amazing.
Yeah. Oh, it's so fucking good.
So they all sit down with old Gorbs.
Gorby Gorbs.
And
again, even though I feel like Gorbachev before this, was awoken to the reality of the situation, their first meeting with, everybody, and when he orders them off to actually go to Chernobyl. So it seemed like, I remember at my first viewing, I was like, okay, well, I think he must be at least somewhat on board with the weight of the situation at hand. But I love when he comes back in the room, he's like, I'm just telling our allies how shitty our situation is.
Yes.
Our power is just the perception of our power, which is, there's truth in that.
Of course.
He's not completely wrong. But at the same time, I love how he's still back on essentially. Especially back then, the Soviet Union. I mean, that was a thing. There was no land war against the Soviets. It kind of just fell in on itself. Our perception comes from the perception of our power. I mean, that's pretty universally true with everything. For everyone.
But especially true for the Soviets, and it's cool that he said that. But I like, he also says, and apologizing to our enemies, which is interesting, right? Because obviously he's on the horn with Reagan and being like, dude, we fucked up. Sorry, bro. But anyway, Legasov is saying, look, there's some good news, right? The airdrops are working to douse the fire. There's been a reduction in radionuclide emissions. The fire will not be extinguished for another couple of weeks. Oh, and there's this other problem, by the way. So nuclear fuel doesn't simply turn cold because it's not a fire. In fact, it will rise as a result of the blanket of sand we've dropped. The uranium will melt and will melt the sand, creating a kind of lava, which will begin to melt through the shield below.
I love how, again, this is still a room full of people who are all being awoken to the workings of nuclear radiation and how this actually goes down. But I love that the word that anybody would jump out at, that Gorbachev jumps out, is like, you made lava? Like, you're telling me shit's under control, but you made lava.
Dude.
What?
It would be funny if it just became comedic hijinks. You've made lava, comrade! Yay! Everyone starts doing Russian dancing. I think it's like the greatest thing ever. Right?
Like Asov's like, no,
guys, this is really serious. No, this is really serious.
Jesus, guys.
The denial enters comedic hijinks.
Just completely absurd. But no, dude, the turn here, where I love that we as the audience, like we are watching Ulana figuring out that there's something more to this, figuring out that boron and sand is not quite the right strategy. So we know there's something detail that Legasov is missing. But I love that Gorbachev and all of these higher ups getting to learn what that is the same time that we learn what this new problem is. And it is, fucking jaw dropping. I was like, oh my God. This is something about Chernobyl that I didn't have a fucking inkling of knowledge about. I had no idea that something like this was possible. And just, oh my God, this is the most terrifying scenario that they fucking lay out.
Yeah, this shit where Legasov basically turns it over to Yelena Kumyuk, of the Belarusian Institute. Thanks for insight. We now are aware that the tanks are, in fact, full. And that's when Gorbachev, as we would say, well, with water, what's the problem? And she says, well, when the lava enters these tanks, it will superheat and vaporize 7,000 cubic meters of water, which, of course, will cause a thermal explosion. A significant
You've heard of steamboats blowing up.
Thermal explosion. What was that?
I said, you've heard of steamboats blowing up. The same principle.
Well, we estimate, she says, 2 and 4 megatons. So a 30-kilometer radius will be destroyed immediately, including 3 remaining reactors at Chernobyl. The entirety of the radioactive material in all of the cores will be ejected at force and dispersed by a shockwave, which will extend 200 kilometers and likely be fatal to the entire population of Kiev. So thanks for the buses, as well as a portion of Minsk, right? Minsk, I'm saying it wrong. The release of radiation will be severe and will impact all of Soviet Ukraine, Latvia, Lithuania, Belarusia, as well as Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, and, most of East Germany.
Jesus.
What do you mean by impact? Gorbachev still keeping his cool here.
Right. You can tell he's shitting pants a little bit.
He has his brown pants on today. And then Legasov continues, well, permanent disruption of food and water, a steep increase in the rates of cancer and birth defects. Yeah. So Belarus and Ukraine impact means completely uninhabitable for 100 years. And that's when Gorbachev starts thinking of the logistics here. Okay, so you're telling me 50 million people? Well, 60. Mm-hmm. And what's the timetable on that? 48 hours, probably.
Yeah, probably. Also, we're talking about completely making these areas entirely uninhabitable for a minimum of 100 years, maybe permanently destroying the possibility of growing food there. Like, it's not just a massive disaster right now and a loss of life and a disruption of people, but a permanent disaster that is not just that's what's so also crazy about this. Like, when you think about the worst earthquake, the worst hurricane, worst typhoon, I mean, it's terrible and it destroys so much, but it can be rebuilt and things can be put up against you can immediately start rebuilding the next day. And you can start, putting up walls, barriers, re-engineering buildings to better withstand these things. With radiation, nah, that's it. You can't be here anymore. Wall off that entire God knows how much square miles of Earth, and nothing can be there. There is no rebuilding. You go somewhere else. Like, it's just gone. That's so crazy. That is such an outside of any other kind of disaster that we can deal with.
Salt the earth is the only equivalent.
Right.
Which I think was kind of apocryphal. I don't know, not a historian, but I'm pretty sure that people didn't literally salt fields. I think it was more of an expression. I think most of the time they weren't going to waste salt on acres of land. But I don't know, not a historian. But yeah, your point is made. Like, that's the difference. The remaining damage is just so ridiculous, man.
Just so terrifying. I mean, this whole scenario, dude, I knew very little about Chernobyl going into this, and really only knew about some of the power plant shit and just how devastating the main explosion was. Like, okay, yeah, really bad. And the, nuclear radiation got out a lot. That's bad, right? This shit, man, was such a shocking revelation to me. Had no idea.
Yeah.
Oof.
Nuclear power is bananas, dude. Like, think about like a Nimitz class aircraft carrier, like a nuclear fucking powered boat.
Yeah.
That is so rad. I think they can go for like 30 or 40 years or something crazy. Let me look it up. Ooh. How long can an aircraft carrier? 20 years. 20 years without going back to port.
Damn.
That's so sick, man.
Just going and going.
20 years. An aircraft carrier, dude. 20 years? That's so nuts.
You got to pull in for food.
How many times you got to fill up your dumb car from here to fucking California? Pretty wild. Well, our victories will come at a cost, right? Because we start to get to the point where this is going to have to be drained manually. The water has collected. Right. And there are gates holding the water there, and it's because of this whole disaster. It's, the water collecting is just sort of a crazy thing that's going to happen. Nobody's really to blame for this, but
no,
it does need to be. We need to drain it
immediately. And I love how that even becomes the priority over the fire and the exposed core. It is that we have to get this water out first. That is now the problem, which, is tragic in its own way, because we're going to have to just let this radiation burn off for more time until we get this, contained, this situation. And then the other, horrible, shocking revelation here that we're going to need 3 men who actually worked at this facility and know the plant and can go into the basement through all of these passageways, get there and manually drain out, open these sluice gates and drain out all of the water. And they are for sure going to die. So we're going to have to find 3 men. We need your permission to kill 3 men, essentially. Holy hell.
Yeah.
God. That is some for God and country shit right there. That is the biggest ask.
Fortunately, we get some volunteers. They didn't have to put a gun on anybody. But I don't find that overly surprising.
Right.
It's pretty heroic shit, obviously.
Absolutely, man.
And their names are Ananenko, Bezpilov, and Baranov. And again, with the pronunciations, but I thought it clear to write down the names of these men who really existed and did this.
Yeah.
So Ananenko, Bezpilov, and Baranov. Bottoms up to those gentlemen.
That is a level of bravery that is hard to process. Like, going and, being on the front lines of warfare is already, I think in a lot of people's minds, the most terrifying possible thing. But I think anybody, even, the most hardened soldier, part of what helps them keep going is there's always the possibility I'm going to survive. Like, I'm a fucking guy. I can use my actual skill and training to, as my own, advantage, my own shield to keeping myself alive and doing the right thing to keep myself alive. When this situation is just, no, you're going to die. Even if you're successful, you're going to die. Like, you're walking into just a slow, certain suicide.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
God. But it's utterly necessary to save tens of millions of people.
There could be some denial there too, There could be maybe we don't. Maybe we'll be one of the lucky people and that we don't get cancered out. Maybe who knows? But yeah, it's pretty fucking brutal, man. There's you're 99% going on a one-way fucking trip.
Absolutely.
It's like when you think about those guys just stand there, okay, now they're going to shoot muskets at us. Okay, I'll just stand here. Or I'm in this Higgins boat, I opened it and okay, so I'm dead. Fucking crazy, man. It's nuts.
True.
Yep. Kamikaze pilots. All right, let me see here.
But this is Sherbina's fucking moment right here, man.
You'll do it because it must be done. You'll do it because nobody else can. And if you don't, millions will die. If you tell me that's not enough, I won't believe you. This is what has always set our people apart, 1,000 years of sacrifice in our veins. And every generation must know its own suffering. I spit on the people who did this and I curse the price I have to pay. But I'm making my peace with it. Now you make yours and go into that water because it must be done.
Dude,
that's my performance.
That is the most profoundly badassedly Russian thing that could have ever been said. Like, holy shit. That is so Russian.
Yep.
Duty, do it and you will die, but it must be done.
Could there have been a better guy to rip that line out?
Oh,
I love that he doesn't have one of these like English accents too. It's a little bit different, because he's a Swede.
Yes.
Oh, he remembers Chernobyl. Did you read about that?
Yes, I did.
He was like, we can't eat like the reindeer.
Mushrooms?
We couldn't eat, like vegetables and shit for a while. That's bananas.
So crazy. Yeah, because Sweden was one of the very first places that detected it.
As we saw in this episode, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So crazy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and we kind of get back to sort of the horror roots that were set up in the first episode, right? With this closeout scene with these guys hitting the water.
Oh my God. Unbelievable, man. It's I couldn't, even as you're watching them stand up and volunteer, watching them get suited up and have their helmets pulled up for them and be all geared up and everything, you're still like, No fucking way, though. Like, holy shit, no way you're going down into the depth of this cracked open, irradiated hell dungeon. You're just going to walk straight in there. And they fucking do, man. Oh, it is unbelievable.
Why did the flashlights fail?
I was puzzling about that too, but I
didn't listen to the whole second episode of the HBO one. I thought maybe he would discuss it, but I didn't have time to listen to it again.
I don't think so. I listened to it, but I don't remember them talking about that. But no, I think, a certain amount of radiation can start affecting, like earlier with the helicopter crash and like the radio was going out first. Like I think it was frying some of the circuits maybe. I mean, I could still be off on that, but I think that's not impossible.
I guess it has something to do with the ionizing effects of the radio. The ionizing radiation starts to break down the electronics. So it could just be severing. It could just be like burning up some of the wires, just really breaking down the wires that even connect the light, just causing it to fail. And a flashlight's a pretty simple device. It doesn't seem like too much of a stretch to break down such a simple piece of equipment.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, pretty crazy, man. But I don't know I don't think either one of us know the exact way it happens, but it is interesting. But yeah, that radiation it's a bullet that goes through everything.
Little tiny bullets. But dude, the visual of them headed down that, like, what a great shot to choose for them. I mean, for one, I'm sure that's just kind of how the layout was, but to choose a shot of them descending that kind of ramp into the water, just all three of them going down, that's it. No backup.
Insane.
God, what a horrific possibility. I mean,
also the audio clue of the dosimeter just going crazy.
Oh yeah,
it's just a constant. It goes from this rhythmic tap
kind of crackle
to this constant as they are just dosed the fuck out.
Ugh. Flashlights fucking die.
Now what?
Now what, dude?
They must have. I have no idea what's going to happen next. I don't know how they're going to find their way around.
Me neither, man.
I do know that Kiev does not get destroyed, so I know they succeed. I know that spoiler.
I know a massive nuclear explosion didn't happen, so I guess I have a slight history spoiler there.
Right.
But yeah, man, just that moment of it's already a desperate situation, but now just the basics that you need to even do this job are falling apart.
Right.
Like, fucking, what do you do?
Right.
Oh, what a hell of a... I mean, like, they found a way to put a cliffhanger in an episode of Chernobyl about the historical disaster. We got a cliffhanger. The fuck? It's amazing.
Yeah. Great end to the episode and very terrifying.
Oh, so pulse-pounding, man. Like, actually.
Listener comments?
Listener comments time.
All right, let's do it. You first.
All right. I got one from here, Mr. Benjamin Prue. It's honestly amazing that we as a species are still here. We continue to play with things that are barely in our understanding, yet that is the human spirit of discovery that has made so many wonderful things in our life. The description of what a high dose of radiation can do to the human body is horrifying. Yet I think the most interesting aspect of the show is the people. Growing up in the 80s, the USSR was the bad guy. So I kind of find it fascinating that these are firemen and workers are just people. They are very much the same as we are here. They have dreams and loves, and yet, much like in our own country, it is the poor to middle class who bear the brunt of these disasters. The ability to humanize these people is a triumph of this show.
Yep.
Great comment, Ben.
Yep. Good stuff. I have quite a comment. So, Christina Chapman emailed me.
I knew this was coming. Fantastic.
Okay, so the subject matter of this is the Chernobyl Death Party Night by Christina Chapman.
Hell yeah.
She says, here we go. A Chernobyl story. It's a bit long-winded, but I hope you guys get a laugh. It's 1986. I'm 23, living in my hometown of Hotlanta, Georgia. It's a crazy party town at the time. In fact, all through the 80s. My best gal pal is turning 20 on May 1st. It's a few days now that the world has known something horrific happened in Russia. One of my older friends is studying nuclear engineering and scares the ever-loving shit out of me that the Ruskies are lying radioactive particles are probably flooding Europe that will travel as far as the United States. A rainstorm could literally bring what she calls black rain, not to be confused with the Michael Douglas masterpiece. So nuclear rain all the way to the USA, that sounds bad. But hey, I'm 23, I have a party to go to. So I get to the party fashionably late. The birthday gal and most folks are already there on Julia's Witch's Brew, which consists of magic mushrooms, God knows what kind of alcohol, and a mysterious ingredient she won't tell us about. But then again, I'm 23. I down a cup and find a long strip of paper at the bottom. Oh boy. What the fuck, Jules? She danced around crazily yapping. Chris got the magic cup. Chris got the magic cup. I got what? An entire cup of mushrooms and acid. I begin to trip my brains out. Everything is wild and fun. Then a big old southern south thunderstorm cracks the sky open. I proceed to convince everyone that Chernobyl is killing us with black rain. So we better party while we can. God, that sounds like a lot of fucking. I somehow talked everyone to going out and dancing in the killing rain until we all melted. I really was calmly and persuasive that we were all dying, that later my friends told me they remember being so ecstatic that we actually survived. After the cops were called by the neighbors and miraculously none of us were arrested, white girls, or melted in the black rain, someone very smartly took my keys away and I slept off the rest in a hallucinating trip. Julia told me it was a joke, that it wasn't acid in my cup. Never forgave her for that bad joke. But goddamn, I have been convinced that it was. The Russians had fracked me up so badly that my young adult was going to end dancing in nuclear rain. So watching the series now is just a sobering wake-up call for what really did happen, a horrendous tragedy. For so long, none of us knew, especially a tripped-out 23-year-old that thought she got the magic cup and was going to dance in black rain until she melted. So thank you both for covering a tough series and making it bearable with your levity and ever-present wit. All right, I don't need this to get sucked off anymore, but thanks for that, Christina.
Thank you.
Rock out as you always do, and cheers to both of you with a magic cuss. Christina, you're a national treasure. Thank you for the email. That was awesome. What a fucking cool story. Great one. Anyone else, Matthew?
Yes, I've got one from Mr. Matthew Lewis, and he was the one pointing out what I was talking about earlier, the dynamic between Legasov and Sherbina. He says, I don't want to get too ahead of the podcast in my comments, so I rewatched episode 2. There is so much to talk about, but to me, the theme of the episode is reality overcoming denial. Totally agree. From over 400 kilometers away, we open with Ulana figuring out that there is a major issue just 7 hours after the explosion. At about the same time, Legasov reads the report, revealing the exposed graphite just moments before walking into the first meeting with Gorbachev and the committee members. Throughout the rest of the episode, the truth that they know is hammering through the layers of denial. Boris's path is the heart of the episode. The development of the dynamic between Boris and Legasov is brilliantly written and masterfully delivered, and can't wait to hear us.
Awesome.
Yummy.
Delish.
Yummy.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matthew.
Good stuff. Well, Matthew, I think we've arrived.
This is it.
This is it. Anything else you want to say before we go?
Boy, these ones, I gotta say, fucking take it out of me. It's really good.
Oh, it's nothing.
Really enjoying
it's nothing yet, so I hear.
That's what I keep. Everybody keeps saying, "Oh, look out for episode 3." That's
4.
the warning.
Is it 3 or 4?
Got. Really? A friend of mine I was talking to today, they were like, "Oh, 3 is a fucking episode." Buckle up. I was like, "Oh shit!" I really
Buckle
can't.
Up,
like,
Buttercup.
We're gonna get off this podcast and I'm gonna go watch it like pretty much immediately. I'm really jonesing for it.
Well, look at you. Aren't you a fancy boy?
Oh, got it all ready.
All right. Well, that is it. Matthew, thank you very much for organizing listener comments. I appreciate that. And we will be back in 2 days to cover Mr. Brooks on the Science Fiction Film Podcast, which is our first bounty of this upcoming bounty season. So make sure you tune in to the live show for us to discuss that. I believe it's Kevin Costner as a serial killer, which is kind of interesting. Never seen it.
Never seen it.
And then, of course, check us out on the web at libertystreetgeek.net. That's libertystreetgeek.net. We have membership options, of course, as you know. You can get access to all kinds of cool bonus content, which we've been putting out in spades, man. We've been putting out a lot of bonus content as of late, and it's been a lot of fun. So, Matthew.
Yes, sir.
Would you like to tell these good people good night?